Hello and welcome back to the channel. So, the dust has finally set on Liverpool's first home game of the season and Arne Slot's first Premier League game at Anfield. And I've had a chance to watch the highlights again. I've watched Match of the Day again. I've done I've looked at YouTube videos, and I've also going from memory quite a bit as well in terms of how Liverpool played, how we set up, and some of the subtle changes and differences that happened throughout the game that I noticed and that I picked up on. And a few other little bits and pieces that I thought were quite interesting. So I'm going to dive into this today. But again, if you enjoy the video, please do drop a like, subscribe to the channel. It's really helpful. And also drop a comment as well if you agree with any of the points I've made here, if you think I've missed anything out, and so on and so forth. So again, thank you very much for everyone who has started to subscribe to the channel and all the likes I'm getting on the videos. It's really appreciated. But without any further ado, let's just dive straight into it. So what I'm going to bring up here now is the pass board, basically the pass map that Liverpool had versus Brentford, and we're noticing an almost running theme in that Liverpool love to play within sort of the areas, the width of the box, shall we say. So if you look at the width of the two penalty areas, Liverpool players are in it, and that congests the middle of the park, but also creates a lot of passing angles in comparison to other teams. So if you take a look, you'll see a lot of these triangles that are forming. So for example, here, and then you've also got outside to inside, but also this kind of also shows a sort of a positions in which the Liverpool players were taking up. And a few things that I noticed that were different from the game against Ipswich. The first one, McAllister is a lot deeper. So in the previous game against Ipswich, we saw him quite high up alongside Diaz almost, creating that sort of overload on the one side. Whereas in this game, we actually relied a lot more on Andy Robertson to fill that role, pushing up a lot higher, but also being a lot more towards the centre of the pitch than holding the width out wide. Also, Salah was further out and more on the wing on this one. I think that was to try and exploit any kind of potential gaps. I'm not 100% sure, I'll be honest with you, with what the actual starting formation for Brentford was, because sometimes I see that they played with a back three with the wing backs coming back to make it a back five, which would explain Salah's position here to try and, when it was a back three, stretch them as far as he possibly could to create those gaps, those channels in between them. But if it, and on other channels, I've seen them that they were playing a back four, which I didn't notice during the game. During the game, I thought it was the back five. But either way, Salah being wide is more designed to stretch that pitch and also to sort of create those gaps. But him being higher up was mainly due to him always being that out ball. So there was a few times in the build up to Salah's goal, I think we saw a long ball from Van Dijk all the way across to Salah, who then breaks down the sort of the channel inside here. Then the ball ends up coming out, Szoboszlai winning it, and the rest is history. But also in terms of him creating the chance for Luis Diaz, the one that he missed, not the goal. Again, we saw Salah sort of coming down this channel here, breaking into the box, and then looking for that cut back, which Diaz had the shot. So quickly on that, before we start diving into the goals, I just wanted to show this here. So this is taken from the Sky Sports highlights on YouTube. So if you haven't seen it, go and see it. And what I will do is just quickly hide my face if I can find it. And the reason why I want to do this is just so you can see, this is what I was talking about in previous games, with the amount of people that Liverpool do commit forward when they're actually on the attack. So if you look, you've got obviously the two players by the goalkeeper, Salah and McAllister. Then you've got Jota over on the further side, Szoboszlai. Diaz is the one bending over because he just missed the shot. Trent's creeping up there, Gravenberch, Robertson and Konate, everyone packing that box. And that's because of the way that Brentford was setting up in their defensive shape of getting a lot of people back. So the way that Liverpool played, again, very brave, but it was almost a case of saying, okay, well, if you're going to drop everyone back, we're going to push as many players forward and really keep you penned in. And that really sort of highlighted something that I was saying in a previous video about the way that Liverpool play against a low block. Let's get rid of that. Is basically that they sort of pin them back, put as many players there, and that's then looking to create those opportunities where, if the ball does get cut back and it's blocked, so there's another Liverpool player running onto it, and so on and so forth, as many times as they possibly can until they finally score the goal. So over onto the tactics board. And one of the things I noticed in the first half especially is that Liverpool sort of played like this. When they had the ball, Van Dijk would often shift over to the centre. Trent would then push himself further forward. He was never truly inverted. By that I mean he didn't really sort of come over into sort of these positions to create almost like a double pivot like this. But instead, he was around here, pushing a bit further up. And then Konate would split himself over onto the other side to create almost this sort of back three, or I don't know what you would call it, a 3-2-2-3 sort of shape and formation, which worked really well in terms of if pressure was applied. What I often notice, say Van Dijk has the ball here, Alisson would then alter his position to here. And what that would do then, if we put a football onto the pitch, like so, Van Dijk would always have that option of passing the ball here, who he could then pass the ball out to here, and then they'd be able to work the ball up the pitch like so. So that was the first thing that I thought was really interesting with the way that Liverpool started playing, was more of a back three shape, but keeping everybody wide to sort of stretch that area and create these sort of passing lanes. So, for example, if the ball does come here, you have Trent that's showing here, you had Gravenberch showing here, and even Szoboszlai was showing. Salah would drop and make himself available on the wing as well. But the one thing that was always happening is when the ball was like this, one thing that I noticed that happened quite a few times is that Liverpool would have the ball here, you'd have your Brentford players marking and showing up here, but it would leave a lot of space over on this side of the pitch here. And then what we would tend to see, as the play sort of developed, Liverpool had an overload on the right-hand side. Then as the ball went into Trent, he would then look to switch the ball over here to Diaz or Robertson if he was pushing further forward. And then basically it would then stretch the Brentford players because they'd all come to sort of defend against this overload on the right-hand side. Then there's that long ball switch onto the left-hand side, which then catches them on the back foot. That was a pattern that I noticed quite a few times throughout the whole game, and it seemed to be developing that way a lot, where we would create these overloads, but particularly on the right-hand side of the pitch. I never really noticed an overload on the left-hand side of the pitch. The way Liverpool played on the left-hand side was also interesting. So there was a few chances. So the first one that springs to mind is the header from Robertson, where the ball comes out, Jota overhead kicks it, and then Robertson then attacks the back post and then heads it, basically bouncing the ball off the goalkeeper's face. So Robertson actually starts the move from here. And so he pushes up onto the halfway line and the ball comes into him. He then lays it off, and Robertson then continues this run as basically an underlap to get himself inside the box. So rather than pulling out wide and then stretching their defence, he actually found a gap to go through the middle, which left Diaz to be able to play this position. And then obviously, as the overhead kick happens around here, Robertson doesn't stop. He sees the ball coming over and then attacks that back post and heads it. It's unlucky, actually, because I think the keeper tries to make himself big, and Robertson, he kind of like just catches him in the face. And this move also happened again another time, but obviously Robertson, he had the shot where I think what happened was he looked across, saw there was no real option there, so tried to drive it into that near post. But again, it's this underlap that Robertson was continually exploiting throughout the game. But also, as shown from the snippet from the Sky Sports YouTube, so if you haven't saw the highlights on Sky Sports, go check it out. We noticed him sort of loitering around this area, just outside the box, but more inverted, more inside on the pitch, which I think what this is designed to do, if you then have, for example, their defenders, they're not sure who they're trying to pick up on these scenarios. So you've obviously got Diaz over here, you've got Jota that's been sort of marked here, and if they are playing a back three, where do they go? And then that often would mean they're dragging players back then to cope with Salah, who's sneaking around the back, and it leaves these gaps basically for Szoboszlai and for McAllister to then start exploiting and to start really sort of playing, dictating how they can play and then creating these channels. But it did allow a number of times, so if McAllister does push up and he's marked, Robertson has this free run on the inside channel to attack any kind of space that he can find, to create an opportunity or to benefit from a rebound, or in this case the overhead kick from Jota. So I thought Robertson had a much better game this time than previously. I thought this looked a lot more like Robertson of old. He was very energetic, he was up and down the pitch, he was basically I felt like this game was him getting far more comfortable with Slot's tactics than previous games. I thought the way that he played in general, really exploiting that inside channel and allowing Diaz to do his work on the outside. But also what it does, so if he's exploiting this space here, he's dragging this defender here, which means then that Diaz can exploit going around like this. And we noticed that a couple of times where Diaz does sort of cut back inside and then come to here. And then he's able to one thing I did notice, no long range shooting from Diaz. Instead, he was looking when he got into those areas of how he could get the ball into the box. Could he cross it to the back post? I think there was one occasion where he did chip it across looking for Salah, but the attack ended there. But this is all created by this run from Robertson. If Robertson doesn't make this run, or say if Robertson goes on the outside here, this defender can cut any sort of if he tries to run inside here, he can be blocked off. So by Robertson pulling this, he's then dragging this defender back and creating that opening, creating that gap, which, I would expect, if Salah's coming around the back here, he's going to be man-marked. You can then look to exploit this with people like McAllister, or if Jota was to, say, come more sort of near post, you can then exploit that with Szoboszlai. So I'd expect that as Liverpool sort of progress throughout the season, that's going to be something that we're looking to do more and more, especially with this overload in the right-hand side of the pitch. So if you imagine Liverpool are playing over here, and then suddenly there's a switch over to Diaz, and Robertson makes this underlapping run, it's going to create a lot of space, especially as their players then are struggling to shift their positions from being sort of positioned over onto the right hand side to then suddenly trying to get back over here. It creates a lot of gaps and a lot of channels that Liverpool can look to exploit. So I thought that was really good. The next thing I wanted to talk about was Diaz's goal. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this, obviously we've all seen it. So there's nothing like sort of really new in this sense. But it's mainly because of the commentating that I heard. And the reason why it kind of like reason why I wanted to speak to you is because I saw some commentating on Match of the Day 2, and they were talking about the Brentford defensive positioning, which obviously it's correct. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it was more from the mistakes that Brentford made, which allowed Liverpool to then go on and score. But I wanted to talk about the run of Diaz in this. So obviously Brentford, they've committed all their players forward. They're looking to try and score from the corner, obviously. And then it's this edge of the box challenge here, where Salah wins the ball. Well, I don't know why you're up there. You can come back here. Salah, he doesn't win the ball, so to speak. Instead, what he actually does is he gets a foot onto the ball, and then it sort of rebounds back off the Brentford player. And then Jota's able to pick the ball up here, and then really sort of drive into this space. As Diaz is running, he's marked by, I believe it's Umbuena, and then there's this defender here that's sort of charging. I think it's like here, like so. And this defender's charging back. But instead, what this defender decides to do is come across the pitch as they're running. And then this creates this opening then for Diaz to sort of exploit it and then cut across the Umbuena as he was running and cut on the inside of their defender. And then it required, obviously, a really good ball, just splitting those two, creating that gap. And then that ball goes through the middle then for Diaz to run on and score. But it's that run from Diaz, which is very good. Because if you watch it develop, he only decides to make that change when he sees... So if they've got their two players running back like this, and then suddenly he comes inside, like so, that's the point when Diaz then goes, okay, well, now I'm going to run outwards. And it really does sort of open it up, because Umbuena, as good as he is as an attacking player, he's not a defensive player. So he is a bit late, I think, to respond to that. And when he does sort of cut across, the ball's already been played. And at that point then, Diaz is pretty much through on goal. And it was a great finish. I'm not going to lie. I've said in previous videos, I do like Diaz, but I do think that his output needs to improve, and especially in final third areas. I think, whilst he can score goals, it's that consistency that we need to see from him, not just in scoring goals. Obviously, the Man City game, we think, where he missed a golden opportunity to score. But then there's also the chances where he could actually play the ball. So, as recently as the Ipswich game where he lofted the keeper and he went over the bar. If he looks across the line, he's got Salah there just ready to just poke the ball into the back of the net. So it's him making the right decisions in those areas. And for this one especially, he did make the right decision. That run that sort of cut right across these two players. opened it up then. Because if he continues his run down here, he's going to be chased all the way, and he's going to basically give up that inside position to Mbeumo. And especially if this defender gets back as well, you're then expecting Jota to sort of make a run like this. But instead, by just being smart and noticing the way that these two are playing here and then cutting across there, that's what created the goal scoring opportunity for him. And obviously, it was a brilliant finish. So those were the main sort of patterns that I did notice. In the second half, Liverpool did sort of go back to a shape that we've seen quite often. Let's get these players off the pitch. So obviously McAllister here, Szoboszlai, and da. So again, seeing these players being quite narrow. So we did see Trent come into this role quite a lot, but also equally Robertson was coming into this role here as well. And Liverpool played with this kind of shape, with Salah probably tucking in a little bit here and Diaz tucking in a little bit here. So they're congesting the middle of the park, but as you can see just by looking at this, it's creating so many different triangle and passing plays that they can have. So into him, into him, into him. And it's a good way of progressing the ball up the field. But again, going back to this pass map, if you look, everyone's kind of, apart from probably these two, but there is a little bit of a difference. The one player is always slightly further forward than the others, and it's creating these sort of staggered line passing opportunities that Liverpool can then utilise to try and really get the ball into space. And again, noticing the pattern of play. So, for example, Szoboszlai, who I thought had an absolutely fantastic game. I thought this was probably one of Szoboszlai's best games that I've seen. His engine, his energy, his little flicks around the corner, his little passes and layoffs. The work that he'd done in the build-up to Salah's goal, where he cut in front of the player, used his strength to stop him from being able to win the ball back, and then just poking it through to McAllister. I thought Szoboszlai had one of his best games that I've seen him play. And you can see here as well the overload. So when you have sort of these three players all coming over here, with Konate, Gravenberch was coming over as well, and we're really just relying on these two to operate on the left-hand side. But they did it really, really well. And so, yeah, we saw this sort of shape quite a lot, as is highlighted here. You've got the back two, you've got your two fullbacks pushing further forward, and then the two players in the middle, which then creates this sort of box shape, like so. Like so. And then what you notice then is you have Jota, who's slightly more to the left, and Szoboszlai, who's more heavily to the right. But then what that can do is it can create sort of this double box shape, like so, where Liverpool have got strength in numbers throughout the entire centre of the pitch, and then that allows Salah to come across, it allows Diaz to come across, because Liverpool have got those numbers, they've got those passing options, and when obviously the ball progresses to the higher parts, we see Trent coming into these sort of regions. As mentioned about Robertson, him creating this underlap. We don't see Trent do the underlap as often. We see him looking to sort of pick up the ball in sort of these pockets of space and then seeing what he can do from there. Can he whip the ball in? Is there a pass that he can sort of see that he can try and bring some other players into play? Has Salah made that run that he can then play the ball into? And it's those sort of areas that Liverpool, I believe it's what Slot was saying about putting the ball in front of the goal and creating the opportunities for the strikers to score. It's by players, and notably for me in this game, the fullbacks were the ones that were really sort of creating those opportunities with the way they were playing. As I mentioned earlier on, Robertson with this underlap coming inside here, drawing players to him and creating spaces for players. Trent with his passing ability and his crossing ability, he's always going to be a danger on those sort of situations. But we saw him on the Ipswich game as well, where he had the one shot blocked. He was coming into this sort of area as well. And I did notice, especially in the first half, that the role that the fullbacks were playing was really sort of that danger play. It was like that's where I thought the goals were going to come from. If we'd have scored more goals, let's just remove this. It would have come from the fullbacks utilising what they was doing in terms of their attacking runs, their attacking intelligence. Back to Trent, after watching the highlights, I genuinely believe he tried to score from every single corner. I don't blame him. looking at Flecken's position on the corners, he was a good few yards off his line. So if he can, especially the one that I think it hits the post, you're talking if it's a few inches in one direction, that goes in. So fair play if that's something that he's been working on. I believe it is something he's been working on. We've seen, if you've seen the video of Slot, I think he was betting him that he couldn't score. I think he had the ball sort of like here, and he was trying to get him to sort of like curl the ball round like this and then get it into the goal, with Trent saying it's impossible, Slot saying nothing's impossible, so on and so forth. And then in this one game, I think there was 2, maybe 3, where he has the corner over on this side and he whips it in, and is sort of attacking this sort of near post, trying to get it in past the keeper, especially when the keeper's position, like he was coming out sometimes. So like here, as the ball then whips in into this area, you've got one of their defenders scrambling back, you've got their keeper scrambling back, and if they can score from it, brilliant. But if not, what it is going to do is it's going to make keepers take notice whenever Liverpool play now. So going forward, whenever Liverpool do play, the opposition are going to think, okay, well, a corner, especially over on the left-hand side, if Trent's whipping it in with an in-swinger, they're going to be thinking, well, we need to double up now, and we're going to need to mark this post because Trent is going to go for that. So not only like if he does have the opportunity and he does score, it's another attacking option, you're also now putting that thought and that fear into opposition teams when we go to play them. So, for example, if we're playing against, say, Man United next weekend and Trent has a corner over on this side, is Onana going to be more willing to sort of come out and claim the ball? Or is he going to be thinking in the back of his mind, Trent, he's going to try and go for goal, so I need to be a bit more on my goal line? And without him coming to claim the ball, does that then give, more sort of dominance and more possibility of a Van Dijk or a Konate? We saw, I think once he had the corner that hit the post, the ball then gets recycled, goes back round to Robertson this time, and then he whips the ball and Konate wins the header, and he goes pretty much straight towards the goalkeeper. But you can kind of see in those moments, the keeper, is he thinking, do I come and claim this cross, or do I, do I stay here just in case? So I think what Liverpool are doing is they're creating a lot of weapons for themselves. There's a lot of different ways that Liverpool at the moment look like they can attack and hurt people. But also, we looked far more defensively solid. I said in my video yesterday, Konate, in my opinion, was man of the match. And one of the reasons why, we often see players coming down, attacking the wings, attacking the space. There's been this theory in the past that Trent, maybe not as solid defensively. And the one thing that I always liked previously was Konate. If Trent is coming forward or if Trent is inverting, Konate is so good at covering this side. He's like a centre-back stroke right-back, and he has that strength and he has that speed as well to be able to just quickly go. So if he sees it coming and he's here, he's out there like a shot, and he's strong, he's winning the ball back, he's aggressive in the way that he defends. In my opinion, he was so solid today. I think that if Kwanzaa, I think he picked up a knock or something in training. He wasn't fully fit for the game, but I think Konate would have started anyway. And I think based on this performance, he's given himself a really good shout to sort of carry on playing. Probably not as good in his passing as Kwanzaa. I think in terms of actual ball playing, Kwanzaa would be the better of the two. But in terms of like his speed and his physicality and his defensive ability, his aggression in that defense, I think Konate wins that and edges it. So I think Konate will probably start again against Man United in a game where you're expecting that they are going to try and exploit this one side, especially with Rashford. And Konate's ability to be able to cover for Trent when he does go. I also noticed a few times Szoboszlai coming right the way over here as well to help cover. So Szoboszlai, his role is actually an interesting one for me, because he kind of mixes multiple roles. Like, he's an attacking midfielder whilst also doing that Jordan Henderson role from a few years ago of making sure that he's covering for Trent when Trent does push forward. And I think it goes to show that in both games, he played the full 90 minutes. And he's got that engine. Like, even on the one chance where, again, from our corner, Brentford looked to sort of counter-attack us, and we saw Szoboszlai busting a gut, like his engine and his speed to be able to get back and cover from Mbeumo when he was attacking. Like, again, we saw that again. So for me, Szoboszlai had a fantastic game. I think what he's doing on the pitch at the moment is going underrated. It's going a bit under the radar. He's a bit underrated in terms of his performances. People perhaps don't notice everything that he's doing because maybe he's not always involved in the goals. He's sometimes, he's involved in the build-up towards creating that goal-scoring chance. Obviously, with Salah's goal, he's winning the ball back in sort of this position. He then plays the ball off to McAllister, and then I think the ball goes into Diaz, and then you've kind of got like this with Salah and Jota, and then it's a good ball. To be fair, it was good vision from Diaz, unselfish play. He saw the opportunity come, but all of that whole thing was done by Szoboszlai. The way that, as I say, the ball, he almost looked at one point like he wasn't sure where the ball was, and then when he realised, he's quickly getting in front of their player, stopping him from being able to get behind him, and then just a little toe poke over to McAllister just to keep that ball and keep that attack alive in that situation. Again, really, really good play. And on the whole, I think Liverpool looked... I think we looked much better from the start. I think we did improve in the second half, but I think that was more to do with sort of tactical tweaks at half-time rather than the players suddenly being geared up or G'd up by the way that we were playing. As I say, I noticed a lot in the first half. Liverpool's sort of back shape was sort of like this, with Trent inverting a bit more and playing a little bit higher up. And even at times, sort of like this, and then Trent sort of holding his width over here. And then in the second half, we did sort of notice a bit more that these two were playing as like the back two, and then allowing Trent and Robertson to push themselves further forward. And I think that's why we look so dominant, because we were committing more players forward with Robertson. Again, he was, sort of posted on this sort of position. We saw on a number of times when Liverpool are attacking his here, or he's underlapping and sort of attacking like these spaces. And that's, more designed to pin them back, as well as also create as many different opportunities as well. When you think Liverpool, I mean, we were even at one point in the quick highlight that I was showing, I think we had Jota was sort of standing here, Diaz had just missed a shot here, we had Salah, McAllister, even Trent was getting involved, and Szoboszlai, Robertson was here. And we even saw Konate and Gravenberch sort of like really sort of packing them in, like so. And then literally the only player back would have been Van Dijk. So it's a very brave way to play. I think at that point we was only 1-0 up as well. So it just goes to show that we were looking to sort of get that second goal, kill the game off, and then we can start to think about the next game. And I really like that about the way that Slot plays. I think with Klopp, and by no means am I saying that Klopp had his one tactic. I know a lot of games Liverpool switched between sort of a 4-3-3 to a 4-2-4 formation. And there was different variations in the way that we played, but you kind of knew under Klopp, Liverpool were going to play this sort of style, and they were just going to rely on the fact that the players had been used to it and the quality of the players, and they would go out and do it. And also Klopp's system of this whole counter-pressing was so dominant for a long period of time that Liverpool, we just looked good, and there was probably almost no need to change. Whereas with Slot, I feel like we have a lot more options in terms of he does tweak things, he changes. Sometimes they're only the smallest little change, but it makes a big difference. So, for example, against Ipswich, at the start we had sort of Van Dijk and Konate here and here, and then in the second half we saw them pretty much opposite side of the box, really sort of stretching that area. And basically, if players were sort of pressing like this, it was then creating gaps for people like Gravenberch, like McAllister, to sort of come in and receive the ball inside here. So it's small changes like that Slot does, that he sees, that makes me more excited to watch Liverpool in the way that we play, because we do now seem to have a lot more different options in terms of not being negative to Klopp in any way, shape or form. Obviously, I think Liverpool were brilliant under Klopp. I thought Klopp's one of the best managers we've ever had, but with Slot, I'm noticing a lot more of these tiny little changes, a lot more of these tiny little tweaks in games, which might not seem significant, but they are. They're creating a lot more opportunities. So going back quickly again, you know, all these players out the way, you know, when you're playing sort of like this with Robertson here, it allows them. So basically, you got Mbeumo, you've got the likes of Wissa. They can sort of push here, and then you're looking for Gravenberch and McAllister to sort of drop into these sort of spaces. But then maybe, because there was a lot of time as well where Brentford were holding on to the ball, especially in their half. They were keeping the ball. They were playing it around their back three or back four, and then you'd see the ball would go back to the keeper, and then he'd look to loft it over to the wing. And then I think what the change then allowed us to do by playing more like this, with Trent in here, and like this, was sort of pin them back, but also give the players a bit further forward, a bit more sort of freedom to press a bit better. So when their players are, let's say they went, for example, with a back four, like so, we're pressing the ball here. And then that forces them, when they're knocking the ball here, you've got Szoboszlai coming over here, and you've also got McAllister challenging over here. The ball goes here, and then he's looking to knock it over to the wing. Then by allowing Trent to be a bit further forward, he can put a challenge in here and sort of keep the pressure on them whilst they're over there, with that comfort and that knowledge that, you know, Konate can cover for him if needed, and then allow Gravenberch to sort of slot back into this role here. So that's kind of the shape that Liverpool were using, especially more in the second half. We were pushing more players further forward. We were committing more players forward. You know, we weren't allowing them to just sort of dictate the tempo. If you watched in the first half, there was periods of time where Brentford were just knocking the ball around. Maybe they looked a bit more dangerous, especially in sort of the opening, pretty much straight from kickoff, where their one player just literally drove the ball forward towards the edge of the box. And then making these subtle changes then really gave Liverpool control in the game and allowed us to sort of assert our dominance over them. And then that second goal really just sort of killed it. And then we started to see Liverpool just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like the total football that you saw from Dutch teams in the 90s. You know, thinking the one chance from Salah, just a load of little one-touch passes and knocks and these kind of things. McAllister with little flicks as well. We just look like a team that's enjoying our football. I don't know whether, like, Slot came out afterwards and said that this isn't a tactic. This isn't something that he's been working on with the team. Instead, it's allowing players and their natural ability to shine through. And it was just brilliant the way that it was just one touch, lay it off. Salah just constantly moving from one side of the box to the other. And then in between that, loads of little touches and passes. I think if that would have gone in, you know, we'd be talking about it as being one of the best goals, especially of the season. But of all time great Liverpool goals, that would be high up there. And I love the way that Liverpool have just got this different range now of ways that we can hurt teams. It's not just going to be a long diagonal from Van Dijk to Salah. It's not just these counter-attacking goals. It's not just, you know, whipping the ball in from Trent. There's just so many different options and so many little tweaks that we can make during a game that just create different options and different opportunities. And I think it'll be really interesting in the game against Man United. I'm not going to do my prediction or anything just yet. I'll do that in a different video. But against Man U, when we're away from home at Old Trafford, obviously the way that they played, we saw the way they played against us in the pre-season friendly. Man U were probably the more dominant team, but not very good in terms of converting their chances. Will Liverpool look to pin them back? Will Liverpool look to commit the amount of players they were committing forward? Or will we look to be a little bit more sort of reserved on the ball? Will we look to recycle it a bit more, you know, kill them with passes, as Slot was saying? Or will we be looking more as a, you know, to hurt them on the counter-attack, the counter-pressing, win the ball back and try and hurt them from then? So, but I'll save that for my match preview coming during the week. But yeah, anyway, thank you very much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below if you noticed anything in the game that I haven't covered. Let me know if you agree with what I've said, or if you disagree with anything that I've said. You're more than welcome to comment. If you like the video, please do drop a like. It does mean a lot to me, to know that you're enjoying the content, but also it does help with the YouTube algorithm to push the video up so that more people can see it. So if you can drop a like, it will be massively appreciated. And if you haven't, please consider subscribing to the channel. Coming up in the future, obviously I've still got my previews, my reviews, going to be discussing transfer rumours and gossip around Liverpool, the contract situation, so on and so forth. But I am also considering doing live streams in the future and maybe watch-alongs. So if you're interested in any of those, please consider subscribing to the channel, and then if you click the little bell to be notified when I next go live, that would also be massively appreciated. So again, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll speak to you all soon. Take care. Goodbye.